there's a good chance that you feel somewhat or very lonely. According to a Cigna 2020 survey, 61% of the roughly 10,000 respondents feel lonely. And according to a survey by The Economist and the Kaiser Family Foundation, 22% of Americans feel always or often lonely. This high level of loneliness is a perfect example of how we have forgotten community in our world. In this video, I want to explore how our current capitalist organization of society has led to hyper-individualism and the abandoning of community, and how all of this is making your life more miserable. But before we go any further, I'd like to mention that I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/funwithfondue. If you'd like to support me making content like this monetarily, you can pledge for as low as €1 a month, and perks of different levels include early access to video essay scripts and monthly vlogs. You can find a link to my Patreon in the description below. Now, let's continue with the video. In our current capitalist organization of society, the individual is placed above the community. We are taught that great individuals like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates are what push society forward, with the work of the many people under them forgotten or pushed to the side as less important. This great man narrative makes it seem like without these individuals, none of these great progresses in our society would have ever happened. Of course, we can never know if that's true, but it is very reductive to place so much responsibility and onus on individuals like this, since they could not have done what they did without the people around them. This individualistic narrative also emphasizes that everything that you do and achieve is entirely up to you, the individual, and gives minimal or no notice to all the work that has come before you and that you benefit from. It makes it sound like we live in an egalitarian vacuum where nothing else matters except your hard work. This is not so. Hyper-individualism has so strongly permeated our Western world that it is seen everywhere, from movies and TV shows to the way we teach history about great individuals being the catalysts of change. Second Thought made a fantastic video on the specifics of hyper-individualism if you want a deeper dive on the subject. I'll link their video in the description below. But moving on. This widespread acceptance and normalization of hyper-individualism has led to a phenomenon you might be familiar with: social alienation. In the 1800s, German philosopher Karl Marx noted something very distinct about capitalism, which differed from our previous feudal society. The fact that we have become alienated or estranged from the products that we make, the process in which we make them, our fellow people, and from human nature itself. Marx wrote about these about 150 years ago, but the points are still relevant today. Let's go through these 4 points, one by one. Firstly, you, the worker, are alienated from the products that you produce because you do not own and control them. In feudal times, you would own the land you work, to an extent, and could use, exchange, or sell the products that you produced. In our current capitalist society, your boss, the capitalist, owns the products that you produce and decides what is done with them. For example, if you build houses for a living, you do not get to live in them. Or if you make cars for a living, you do not get to drive them, and so on. Secondly, you are alienated from the labor process because you have no control over your working conditions. You have no say in how your work is organized, what effect it has on you physically and mentally, and what you work on. For example, at your job, you do not get to decide the working hours or company direction in any democratic manner. Rather, all of this is decided by the capitalists, who want to make sure they get as much work out of you for as little pay as possible. Thirdly, you are alienated from your fellow people by having them reduced to their labor. What I mean by this is that on a regular day, your life is touched by thousands of people. No, really, I mean that. Imagine a typical day of yours. You commute to work with maybe your own car or public transportation. You might grab a coffee on the way and eat out somewhere for lunch. Then, after the workday, you sit watching a show on your TV. Did you notice something missing? That's right, people. Sure, you don't meet thousands of people, but they touch your life from the work that has been put into the car you drive, the technology you use, the food you eat, and so on. But we only see these as products, devoid of the people who made them. The human touch is stripped away from all these products. We are then only reduced to the labor that we have, which robs us of our connection to each other. Lastly, you are alienated from your very humanity by capitalism denying you your agency. As humans, we have the ability to shape our world around us together to what we want, but this ability is robbed from us when we are coerced to do work that we do not even want to do as a requirement for subsistence. We are forced to work meaningless jobs as a prerequisite to be allowed to live, while this work is making the capitalists rich. We could act collectively to meet the needs of the many. Instead, we are driven by profit to make sure the capitalists keep amassing more and more wealth. To continue on the idea of acting collectively, our hyper-individualistic capitalist society makes it seem like big change is impossible since we are alone and disconnected from each other. It makes it seem like no other form of existence than capitalism is possible, even though modern capitalism has only been around for some 500 years, and makes it so that it's easier for you to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Mark Fisher calls this phenomenon capitalist realism in his book of the same title. But this idea only serves the capitalists to make sure that you, the worker, don't dare to think that something better and more equitable would be possible, to make you hopelessly resigned from the world around you, and to make you easier to exploit and extract profits from. Don't fall into this trap. A better world is possible, and it will revolve around community. In pre-industrial Europe, most people lived in villages where they tended to their own land and lived off subsistence farming. Farmers would help each other in activities related to farming, and people in general were more aware of the people that they lived and worked with. People would also live in more communal living spaces that were inhabited by extended family and friends. Of course, in our modern world with notably more people and bigger cities, this would not be possible as such. But my point here is to show that life used to be a lot more community-oriented. Now we live in buildings where we barely know the people around us and go to work in some other area of the city where we do not spend any time outside of work. Thus, we are missing community, which plays into the hands of capitalists. If our lives were more community-focused in the areas where we live and work, this would allow us to come together and organize better, to demand for a better world. You would know and understand the problems and plights of the people around you, and they would know yours too. And you could then come together and demand a more just and better world. We need to rediscover this connection with each other. You need to understand that we are all intrinsically linked to each other. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, your life is touched by thousands of people every day, and on top of that, your life relies on the work of thousands of people that have come before. Think of all the people who worked to create technology like the internet, smartphones, and computers that we have now, which then allow thousands of other people to create new things, which then allows you to create something new, which in turn will allow others to create something new in the future. Do you see how it is impossible for us to think that the individual is above the community when we are so heavily interlinked? We need to stop thinking of others as competition and instead start thinking of cooperation. Since childhood, we are taught that others are our competition, that we live in a zero-sum game where some win and some lose. We need to shake off the shackles of this rigid thinking. Instead, we need to see others as our compatriots, as people who we can help and who can help us in return. We need to learn that we don't live in a zero-sum game and that we have enough for everyone to go around. I hope this video has helped showcase how we are intrinsically interlinked with each other, and that the idea of hyper-individualism is there to serve the capitalists and drive us away from each other, to make it easier to exploit and deceive us. I hope this has helped you reconsider how you think about the people around you. We have forgotten community, but together we can rediscover it and bring about a better and more just world. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps me more than you think. And let me know what thoughts this got going in your head in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and thank you to my patrons whose names are now on screen for supporting me. If you want to support me making these kinds of videos, patreon.com/funwithfondue is the best place to do that. You can pledge for as low as €1 a month and you'll get all kinds of cool exclusives depending on the tier, such as the script for the video essays and a monthly vlog. Link to my Patreon is in the description below. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, nice.